So please join me as I give a warm welcome to our speaker, Mr. Michail Katkoff, the founder and deconstructor of fun.
I'll just do a quick introduction of myself. Hello. I worked in gaming for about 15 years. My background is on the product management side, as well as management and design. So I worked with big companies before. Before I started my own company, which is called Savage Game Studios, that was later acquired by PlayStation. I work actively with several different gaming funds, like, you can see them over there. And then I have a media company that is now about 13 years old. So this media company focuses on especially the B2B side of gaming, founders, investors, all sorts of people. So if you've read it, if you've consumed the content on YouTube and other channels, that's great. My talk today is very simple. I wanted to talk about what's happening in the industry, but I divide it in two ways. So I'm going to give the context through different type of graphs and numbers of what's going on. And the beef, where I get my information, is from a lot of the interviews that I do throughout the year. So about 100, 150 interviews with people working in gaming. So that's the menu of the day. Now, all right. So in short, what's happening in the market? On one hand, we have the mobile market recovering. So the downloads have continued to slide, but the revenue has been continuing to go up. The market is very, very mature, especially on mobile side. What means is the older games are taking a more significant percentage of the revenue. We have rising ecosystems, especially on the east. So as studios have been closing in the west, more have been opening up in Pakistan, Vietnam, and of course China. We have apps that are winning and taking over the revenue from games. We have PC gaming that is doing incredibly well, growing almost 20% year over year. And finally, we have investors that are moving out of gaming due to multiples going down. So I'm going to go through this in a specific charts. Now, what's very good about gaming is the compound annual growth rate, which is almost 5%. And so the amount of players is constantly increasing, which creates secular tailwind for the entire industry. So even if you have a bad year or bad 2 years or bad 3 years, still the amount of gamers is constantly increasing, which means the business will at some point again pick up and start growing. And the second thing is, even though there's down on certain platforms, there's significant rise on others. And maybe people don't know how big Roblox is, and there's just a comparison number where you can see how many players Roblox actually concurrently has compared to Steam and compared to Fortnite. So going back to mobile gaming, we can see the gradual recovery in terms of revenues. But what's problematic is the decline of the installs. As you can see, every year pretty much the installs are going down. So that means the revenue is concentrating more and more on set titles. And talking about this concentration, we can see that the titles that are 5 years old or older are taking more and more percentage of overall revenue, which is just another proof point of maturity of this particular platform that is half of the revenue of the gaming. And then final point of maturity is, of course, the concentration of revenue in terms of publishers. So on the left side, you can see the downloads. The overall revenue numbers for top 50% of the publishers, top 50 publishers, and those outside of it. And on the right side, you can see the revenue. And the interesting part about this graph is that the revenue is not growing because there are new publishers coming in and growing. The revenue is growing mainly because the existing publishers are increasing their revenue share. So everything stays consistent, not a lot of room for new publishers. And finally, the amount of new games being launched. As you can see, this starts tracking in 2012. And the amount of new games is what? Almost a third the games in App Store is reaching to a point where it's almost the same as it was 2013. So that's like iPhone 5C. And the amount of new games is just a fraction of what was in 2012. So incredibly mature market with growing revenues and declining installs. Then breaking it down by countries, both in terms of downloads, where are the users, where are the publishers with most users, and where are the publishers with most revenue. The differences here is that a lot of companies that have a lot of users tend to monetize through in-app ads, and this doesn't track in-app ad revenue. It tracks mainly the in-app purchases. So you can see the rise of new countries, especially Asian countries. We see Vietnam, Hong Kong, Pakistan, Singapore, India really climbing up. And in terms of revenue, of course, Turkey, Singapore, Japan doing really, really good. And existing markets like Finland, where I'm originally from, is not doing that well. And then finally, on the apps. So especially after the COVID, a lot of people started, well, not after the COVID, but as the COVID ended, there were some economic uncertainties. People didn't have that much disposable income. And so now they're trying to see where they're going to spend their money. And usually people continue their subscriptions, whether it's Netflix or Spotify. And if they have to save on something, they might do a little bit less purchases in games. And we can see that happening through essentially in-app purchase revenue cleaning over more towards apps than it is to games. And here you can see that even though the revenue has stayed the same, mostly for gaming companies, it has constantly increased for apps, where apps is taking more than 50% of all revenue. And if this trend continues, it's going to be 70% of the App Store revenue coming in through apps. So this speaks of the power of apps. It's also the reason why more and more investors are investing into apps and why apps is being more promoted by the app stores. On PC gaming side, tremendous growth. So 20% growth year over year. Over 5 years, they've doubled the growth. And you can see that despite mobile gaming maturing quite significantly, PC gaming has been growing. And there's a lot of interesting games coming in from smaller studios, which kind of opens up possibilities for gamers that don't want to perhaps make live service games, that have good skill sets. They have a team of 1, 2, even 3 people who are able to make massive hit games. But at the same time, it's not sure shot. PC gaming is very difficult. To get to the position where you're actually monetizing is equally challenging and often needs help from a publisher. And finally, with the gaming market looking what it is, so mobile being very mature, which used to be the place where gaming investors were going through, PC market being challenging in terms of investor opportunities, more interesting for publishers, the investors have largely moved out from gaming, and that has been challenging for new companies coming out, but as well as for companies raising for growth funding. And so that has changed the funding scene a lot and, of course, impacted the growth. And the main reason, I'll talk about it, is the multiples. Yeah? Why investors? Okay, so I'll say why investors are moving out. So investors are moving out because main reason, only one reason, is the multiples for gaming companies have gone from about 10x to 1.5 to 3x. So in order for the investors to get the payback what they need, especially we're talking about venture capital, you have to come in pretty much at pre-seed now. The multiples are just not there, and the multiples are not there because the market is not growing. And so as the market is not growing, the investors are moving out, and they are actually now investing more into apps that have a 10x multiple through subscription revenue. But I have a graph about that. So one reason, multiples. That's really it. All right, so going to the beef and kind of putting in 3 trends that I think are happening based on a lot of conversations that I've been having throughout my channel. So the 3 trends are apps, which is related to this, China, and AI. And so going in on the apps trend. This is actually correspondence with one of the founders of a company that I've invested into, and he sends regular updates naturally. And so this is a mobile gaming company, and like in September, he sends an update that, you know, they've hit 7% month-over-month growth, all-time high revenue yesterday, things are going good. Next month, the founder says, again, best revenue month ever, 5% month-over-month growth, things are going great. Sends another update. We delivered steady revenue of 3.4, forecasting 35% increase in revenue, everything is going great. So based on this, it's fantastic. And so if I'd ask you, with this founder, he wants to sell his company. how many offers would he be getting after engaging with the bankers? Would it be less than 1, 3, 5? 3. It's a good. Around 3 would be good, right? Well, the number was 0, and that kind of puts it challenging. And so what this founder said is like, my next company will be making apps, and the reason being is that first of all, you have a benchmark for apps now. Duolingo, their stock dropped 65% this year, and so now the company is only valued at $9 billion with one app. And what they have done with the app is they've used a lot of learnings from gaming, and still they are about maybe 5 to 7 years behind of what a good gaming company is doing these days in terms of sophistication. The second part is why gaming companies are moving towards app is they have both the talent to make apps and as well as experience to not only make apps but also scale apps and optimize apps. And the third part is investors are funding apps. So if you can see from here, yeah, you can see the multiples. So if you have a gaming studio, it's very hit driven. Your multiple these days 1 to 3, about 3. If you have a platform, you have a wide portfolio, maybe get to 4 to 5. But if you have a subscription-based app, you're already at 6 to 10. That's a whole different revenue. If your company is making 20 million, 10x that's a $200 million company. If your company is making 20 million in games, that could be a $20 million company. Or maybe 30. So that's the reason. So this is kind of the point from the founder is, not anti-gaming, but just pro-reality. These apps, so most of these apps are non-gaming related, and what happens in these apps, let's say crypto.com, that's a good app example that has gamified a lot of things. So it approaches investing almost as a game. So it tries to engage you with daily habits. You have actually missions that you have to do, like daily quests. You're investing your capital that, not even investing capital, I forgot what they call it, but basically you put in certain amount of crypto that gets turned into something else in an amount of time. So they're adding basic gaming mechanics. And the gaming mechanics is not what we call gamification, but they are daily habits. So essentially these apps become something that you open up multiple times a day. And that's why they're succeeding, in my opinion. So same as like Duolingo. Nobody has learned a language through Duolingo, but they engage it for like 900 days straight. All right, so let's talk about another trend, which is China. And so on the China front, when we look at the top publishers, we can see that now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of the top 20 publishers are already based out of China. And, some of them, there's one based out of Hong Kong, which could actually, be considered Chinese. And when we think about the games that are coming for China, there's all sorts of different games. Like Genshin Impact is a fantastic AAA production game on all the platforms with team of, at least 1,000 people working on it. And then you have an incredibly simplistic game like Block Blast with, I think they had a 200 million monthly active users at the moment. Incredibly simplistic, but super engaging. Then they are really good also at coming up with new genres and portfolios. So this is Happy Games with their Archero and the same system, kind of like more and more inventing and building up new genres, like in this case, hybrid casual. And then they also have deep strategy games that are being able to scale with very innovative marketing tactics that are then implemented back into a game. So they show a different game than the game is, and if that ad works, they put that game into that big game, almost like creating an app of apps. And we look at, let's say, a top Western publisher like Supercell, and we look at Century Games, which is a Chinese publisher. At the moment, like even though the graph looks not that big here, but it's still, we're talking about on monthly revenue, nearly double of what Supercell is making. And what's really interesting is when we talk about how fast Chinese are fast following essentially games. So here's a game called Merge Mansion. It's based out of Finland. They were first to the market to launch. They find a really nice scale of making about, 10 million a month? So it's a good game. And then they were followed by another game. So this is Travel Town. It's actually an Israeli game or Israeli published. So they come up, they find a better way to do live operations and play Tika Playbook and so forth. And then the Chinese come. Boom. They basically learn from everybody. And this game alone generates much more than these two games beforehand. And it came later, took over the market. Then the same company launched another game, which is... So these are all very, very similar games, similar looking, similar playing. So they launch another game, and it becomes third largest in the company in this specific genre. And the Century Games that I showed before, who make strategy games, they looked at this, they said, hey, we want to be also part of this market, this merge market for women. And they launch a game, and in just a couple of months, they're already bigger than the original game that kind of essentially created this market of merge games. So I wanted to just show a case of how fast they follow and how quickly they take over entire markets. And when they take over the market, they don't stop. They will launch another game to take even more of that market. So, can you repeat the question? Yeah. So this is a really good question. Are they cannibalizing market or are they growing the market? They are growing the market and they are closing it down almost for everybody else. So what it felt like with that first game that came out, it grew to 10 million and it was pretty much stable. So you would look at the market, you would say, okay, that's about the market size, 150, 200 million dollars. And then Chinese game came in. Well, no, there was an Israeli published game, so that grew the market, and then the Chinese tripled the size of the market with the game, and the reason being, so I'm gonna just go why they're so good. So there's really 6 elements here that play for the Chinese. Number one is they have very, very, very big teams. So we're talking about hundreds of people working on a single game. So the speed of development is incredibly fast. Whatever you come up with, they will do it twice better tomorrow. The second part is the culture of working, long days. The third part is being very pragmatic. So unlike a Western publisher that tries to think about more creative ways of what we want to do, how we want to create surprising, they're thinking about business focus. They're thinking about LTV curves. They're thinking about customer acquisition. They're approaching it from the business perspective. And then that also leads to having monetization at its core. They don't launch the game to see how it's doing, how it's engaging, and then adding monetization to it. They start with monetization because it's more important. The more money you make, the more players you can acquire, and that's a flywheel. So monetization is a fuel to growth rather than something you put in on a game when it's fun. Development factories. So that means not that people work like in a factory. That means you're putting in multiple SKUs, like in this example. So there could be 5 teams inside of Studio that are making the same game. And maybe 2 of them launched because they're the best out of 5. They don't say, you guys, we believe in you, you will do this game, and the company is behind only one team. No, they hedge their bets, multiple bets at the same time to the same target because you want to win. And then finally, unfair market advantage. You have a closed market of about 700 million players where only you can publish, and so your addressable market is much larger than anybody else's. But there's also a way to succeed. So, of course, developers outside China can't compete with talent costs. They can't compete with volume. They can't compete with speed. And they can't compete with technology. And so what you can compete is, first of all, creating games that are properly scoped to the resources that you have and infinitely replayable. Games like Clash of Clans or Clash Royale, people keep playing them 10 years, 15 years in a row because the core is just so good. The second part is community as a distribution. So one thing that Chinese developers struggle with is they don't have the same type of community access as we do, and understanding of the local communities. And also they don't have the same... I'll just add them later here. And also they're not able to create the same type of global cultural IPs. So the IPs that Chinese create are excellent in China, but they are still unable to create IPs that would resonate extremely well outside China. And so oftentimes they license IPs where they're really good, like Call of Duty or Marvel or other ones. But at the moment, Western companies still are able to create IPs. And then finally, the way teams should be built out, I think, in the West is by having very compact, very senior, very focused teams, because that way you can move very, very fast. because you can't compete with the amount of people, so you have to compete with the talent density and the ability to work highly efficiently together. Any questions on the China? All right. I worked at a Chinese company, so that's my background. And then finally, on the AI part. So AI is interesting. On one part, when you look at the AI news, there's all the negatives, that the job losses, job losses being the first part. And then when you look at the other part is like what have been the benefits coming in from AI. So I don't see my notes. I don't remember where these headlines are directly, but I remember that Harvard Business Review was talking about work slop. There was MIT report saying that 95% of generative AI pilots have failed. Most of the companies have not been able to regain the benefits, the ROI from their AI projects at the moment. It's not saying that AI doesn't work, but the promise is not there with being delivered. At the same time, there has been tremendous amount of, especially if you look at the gaming side, tremendous amount of progress. World models is one of the most interesting ones, where the AI is creating models that is not only a set of assets, but it's actually a world that you can interact with. So now you're creating an entire world that are interactive, that are playable, that are addressable. And also the time between different developments is incredibly fast. So this is only 7 months that it took from Genie 2 to Genie 3. Again, I'm sorry I don't see my notes here. I would add much more detailed notes. But these are agentic models where the Genie is a specific agentic, actually this one. So this is AI agent in 3D environment. So this is a Google developed SEMA model. The videos are not playing, but basically what happens is the agents are interacting in the world models. So you give them a voice command and they do the things that they should be doing in the game. So the agents start behaving almost like humans. So let's say if you're playing a shooter game, they will do misfires. They will do certain mistakes. They will retreat when they think they're in panicking. They will communicate with you. So they do much more player type of behavior. And that's very interesting when you're building world models. If your agents are behaving yet like humans, so you can actually populate your worlds much faster with human-like behavior. And that, of course, opens up not only possibilities in how you build the worlds, but also how quickly you can populate them with human-like behavior, which is a pretty much of a Matrix type of a scenario where you don't know who the real player is or not. So overall, kind of summarizing, I feel like I hear there's almost two types of strategies that companies are taking regarding AI in gaming. So the first one, not the most common, but maybe for the smaller companies, is the sort of an all-in AI, like becoming AI native type of a strategy. So AI in this case becomes the pipeline. You have very small teams that are orchestrating through agents different actions. The games are becoming dynamic because of their interactive world models. The iteration speed is much, much, much more faster, and you're building new genres. So a good example of this type of a company, even though this is not purely a game company, it's more of an ad tech company, is AppsFlyer. And what they've done, I feel very well, is instead of the mandate for AI coming from the top where they say, hey, everybody has to use more AI, they paused the work. This is a 1,300 people company. They paused the work for a quarter, and everybody in the company had to go through a 3-week course, AI Builder course. And they have also internal teams of AI consultants. So every person in the company, no matter if they're an engineer or a marketer or a product manager or somewhere in between, they have been taught how to use AI. And through that, they're building their own agents and their own tools, and then they get help from the local, from inside consultants to finalize the tools if they are not working properly. And then the sort of a measured model is what Zynga does. So AI is integrated where it works. There's existing pipelines that are intact, and the AI used is a booster in different elements like creative production or analytics. The productivity gains are incremental. Creativity is very much human-led, and in the end, it's very low risk. There's no disruption. There's no new ways of handling process. It's existing way, and you're just making it better. So, on that note, these are my summaries of the market. Thank you so much for attention and for the questions. And if anything else, I'll be around. Thank you.